Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our guest, the PDP governorship candidate of Lagos State, needs no introduction. He vied for the same position in 2011, 2015, and he'll be at the polls again in 3 days. Jimi Agbaje's plans for the development of Lagos have evolved over the years. This time around, he's saying that Lagos must be, in the next 10 years, be set on a path of becoming the second largest economy in Africa. And he'll be doing this by anchoring the state on the platform of education, by creating a knowledge-driven economy. He's here in the studio to tell us how he'll be doing this and so much more. Good morning, Mr. Agbaje.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Yes.
So before we delve into your manifesto, I first want you to sort of clarify the point that you made recently, that the presidential and National Assembly elections were a violation of the social contract between the government and citizens. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think I was talking in terms of the intimidation, the threats, the violence, the snatching of ballot boxes, the burning of ballot papers was what I believe what we're referring to. That the whole essence of the social contract is that there is a democratic process in place and that the people must be allowed to exercise their rights. And what you had on the 23rd of February was one in which people were very much disenfranchised. And this really was coming from the ruling party in Lagos State.
All right, sir. We heard of an incident. Please help us clarify this. In the Ajeromi area of Lagos State, where it was reported that some youths actually attacked you.
No, not me. Not in Ajeromi, fellow Dun. I think what you're probably referring to would have been something a bit earlier in Iba.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't. I wasn't the one that was attacked, but it was a convoy that was attacked. Okay. You know what happens in these rallies is you find that those that are behind are quite vulnerable to people who want to, create mischief. So what really happened was that we had gone. Actually, we had moved on, but I think those that were behind the convoy were attacked. It wasn't Ajeromi, it was Iba.
Okay.
In Ojo local government.
Is your campaign organization feeling the heat of being an opposition in Lagos State?
Well, it's not so much feeling the heat, I think, is that the elections in 2015, well, to correct you, I didn't run in 2011, I ran in 2007. But the election in 2019, this one is a bit different in the sense that there's a new dimension that has been brought on. I've just mentioned the issue of, intimidation. In the last week and a half, you had situations where some Obas, for example, have told their constituents that they must deliver their areas, and they're warning the people. Landlords have been told that if the votes from their area go another way, then they're going to be in trouble. We've had non-Indians with their issues. So, you have that going on. Again, campaign is run on donations, on contributions. You've had this government presence, this, on those who are potential donors, where they're told that they must not support, the opposing party. So you don't have that free way of doing things. The whole essence of politics is to be able to sell yourself, sell your policies. You do need funds to run it. You also need the electorate to be able to make their choice. But when you have this intimidation, this suppression, in fact, what you get when you're on the streets today for people like us is, oh, we're going to vote for you, but how are we going to hold the votes? That in itself speaks volumes, because you find that even the electorate doesn't have confidence in the system because of what they're going through, because of what they see. So, it's like, oh, they've told us in our area that if the votes go in some way, we're all in trouble.
Well, let's talk about non-Indians, because you just mentioned it. What do you say to those who say you are fanning the embers of ethnic discord following the outcome of the presidential elections, where we saw some disturbances? They say you have not capitalized on that situation, and you have been campaigning on ethnic rivalry. Well,
I wonder, they need to quote me. If anything, I think it's the ruling party in Lagos that has been courting the non-Indians rather than me. I didn't go to collect any chieftaincy title from non-Indians. I didn't promise non-Indians that one day they'll be governor in Lagos State. So when you talk about fanning anything, I'm not guilty in the sense that nobody's going to put me on record as having said anything. as having committed to anything. But you have, the ruling party, of course, has the state apparatus to run out all kinds of propaganda. Jimi Agbaje has said he's going to make non-indigenous, the Igbos, Oba of Lagos, and I laugh, Jimi Agbaje has done this. Jimi Agbaje has done nothing. If anything, they're the ones that have done all this. And they're the ones actually funding this thing.
Are you saying you're not cutting non-indigents doing your bid?
It's
all about numbers.
Let me put it like this, in terms of numbers. There's a reality on the ground. The average South-South person, the average Southeast person is PDP. It has nothing to do with Jimi Agbaje. And that's a reality. And that's why you find that if you go to the East, you go to the South-South, they're PDP areas, strongholds. And so the people here are first and foremost PDP. It's not about Jimi Agbaje. So what the ruling party has tried to do is to run an agenda, playing that card and trying to put us on the back foot. Well, time will tell whether it's going to work. We got endorsements, or they got endorsements, in the last few days. So I say, fine, if you got endorsements now, will you allow people to go out and vote? Which is what I think should happen. But then there's still this threat, there's still this bullying across the board. And it's not even restricted only to non-indigenous. And that's why I'm saying that you find that right across, especially outside Lagos Metropole, even in Lagos Central, you're having people where you're talking to landlords, like I say, you're talking to CDAs, and you're telling them that, we're going to look at the votes in your area. And if it's not going to go away, we're coming back to you after elections. That kind of thing.
What are you doing to counter all of this?
Well, we're telling people that that's why we're talking about it's a freedom struggle, and that they better, they're already there. We're about to push these people out, and they cannot step back at this point in time. And that if we're able to just push them out, then all that will stop. But if you do not stop it now, it's going to even get worse if these other people remain in power. And that's the truth.
Okay, if I may, just two quick questions. But first, on these non-indigenous votes, which happens to be perhaps your stronghold of your party. Now the Ohanese, Lagos, endorsed the APC candidate, and there was the demand or promise of 6 commissioners. Do you have any such sweetener?
Yes, I'm saying that
for the non-indigenous. Like
that's why I say that who is cutting who. I have not had any agreement. I have not had any issue.
No, do you have any
of commissioners?
Voting
it's
for
not about sweeteners. I think it's about making Lagos all-inclusive. It's about everybody playing to his strengths. It's not so much about giving commissioners. And I tell people when they talk about this commissioner thing that you can have a commissioner or commissioners that really have no effect. If you're talking about representation for the people, it's neither here nor there. I think what we need to look at in terms of commissioners are people that are going to deliver public goods and services. And that's important, irrespective of where they come from. It's not about, you must make my own son, or you must make this indigene or this non-indigene commissioner. And so it's never been an issue that has come up for discussion with me. Neither was it in 2015. And that's why I laugh, like I said, when they say, we were talking about making somebody Oba of Lagos or no Oba of Lagos. It's not something that has ever come up at all. So it's those that are cutting this, and of course you make a promise of 6 commissioners or whatever, and then when you get into office, you reverse that position.
Now, the result of the presidential poll showed clearly that the APC has at least won the election with some distance. Now, since then, what efforts have you made? Do you think you can close that gap and win the
Well, if you're talking about Lagos, if you're looking at the Lagos elections, don't forget that the ruling party in Lagos promised 3 million votes for the president. Of course, they were very far off the mark. What you have is a situation where in Lagos, you had a presidential election. You had a number of people who, even including the ruling party members, who would say, yes, we're going to vote for our candidate, the presidential candidate. But in Lagos, it's going to be a different vote. So I think the whole essence is that the other camp, the ruling party, today is very jittery because that gap is such that they know that we're going to get more votes this election than the last election. And that's why there's this intimidation, there are these threats going on, this bullying, going on to ensure, just to make sure that people do not come out to vote. Because the more people that come out to vote will be in our favor rather than their favor.
You've talked about the option of voting one way for presidential elections and voting in a different direction for governorship elections. You've also talked about the intimidation, the general antipathy between your party and the ruling party. Now, there's some who realize that that option to vote differently is there, but don't want to take it. They recall tensions like we saw in the days of President Obasanjo and Governor Tinubu, as they were at that time, when President Obasanjo withheld statutory monthly allocations to Lagos. If you have such an acrimonious relationship with the ruling party, how would you plan to govern if elected in opposition in the national context?
I think you know, you're taking a scenario that I become governor and probably the House of Assembly is not controlled by me. Is that where you're going?
In opposition.
Yeah, basically, you see, at the level of governance today in our country and in Lagos State, it's the issues that you put on the table. I say I want to do education. We want to be disruptive in education. It's a big idea. Therefore, we want to ensure that our public public education is as good, if not better, than private. Now, you're going to roll out plans. And you're going to throw it out to the public. You're going to throw it out to the House of Assembly. Now, let's see how a House of Assembly says that is not possible. You're talking of a health insurance model for all citizens of Lagos. Are you going to say that a House of Assembly will publicly say no? What you find that happens in many cases is that when you're running policies or you're running governance under the table, then the people don't really see what's happening. But we're going to be right on top of it. We're talking about the Freedom of Information Act, that we're going to actualize it from day one. So it means that there's nothing hidden. So it gets more difficult for people to even demand, because it's going to be out there. So it's the kind of thing that you're going to run, the kind of way you're going to run. You say you want to provide power, for example. Is anybody going to frustrate you on that? It's the kind of policies that you bring across that will make the House of Assembly on their toes. It's going to be difficult for them to publicly say no. But it's when you have these underhand dealings, want to take care of you, take care of me, then you have a problem. But we're running policies that are going to be right there on the table, and people are going to appreciate that it's going to be difficult to stop.
All right, as we build up to the elections in a matter of days, security has been a big problem. We've seen the IG just recently address the nation and give us an update on what to expect in the coming days. Lagos became a flashpoint in terms of electoral violence, although he didn't mention that Lagos State will be among those states that will need reinforcement going into the gubernatorial elections. What are your fears as regards security? Or first of all, what's your perspective about security in Lagos State leading up to the elections and in Nigeria in general?
Yeah. Well, I think for Lagos, it's the greatest fear. If people do not feel safe to go out and vote, then you're really not running a democratic process. It's not free, it's not fair, and it's not credible. That's the reality. And I think the security agencies in Lagos are going to need to do a little bit more between now and Saturday to give assurance to citizens that they're safe. And that's very important. I hear that in neighboring states, they're going to have the military. I don't know what the military is supposed to do there. But we're saying that the police must say that, look, we're not going to take the nonsense that happened the last time. The security agencies know these people that that create this havoc, and they must contain them. We are saying that even the videos show them how much have they done in terms of bringing to book these people. That's the way to move. If you have not done much in bringing them to book, then what it means is that they feel that they can do a lot more. We know the names. We know those people that are involved. We know the strongholds. We know the areas that these things happen. And the police definitely, if the will is there, can do something.
As political parties in the state, what have you people done in ensuring to put more pressure on the security forces?
Well, let me say that, since the Saturday elections, the presidential elections, I've spoken to the heads of the different agencies, security agencies. I have visited even the sites where, where this mayhem, took place. I've gone there to try and assure the people. I've had a press conference. I've issued releases. I've tried to talk to people across the board, not just the non-indigenous, like I said, because this intimidation is not just peculiar to the non-indigenous. It's just that the ethnic thing builds that up. It's across the board. Like I said, I have friends in the financial sector, in private sector, who find it difficult to even talk to me in public now because it's like once they're speaking to me, it means that they're funding my campaign. It's that bad, and people don't really appreciate what's going on. So it's a continuous process, and we're going to do that right up till Saturday, really, to try and assure, because it's a failure for Lagos as a state that has 5.5 million people that have collected their PVCs, and you have a 20% turnout. There's nothing to be proud about for Lagos, because what you had at the presidential election was just about a 20% turnout of those that had actually collected their PVCs. That's not democracy. The more the people, have a say, the better it is for Lagos. And that's what we must continue to sell. And that's why it's annoying that you have people who, rather than allow people to come out to vote, they're actually suppressing them. And the message out there is, if you're not going to vote for us, then don't come out to vote.
Well, you've talked about this briefly, but let's be specific now. In 2015, you won 5 local governments out of the 20 in Lagos State: Jeremy, Oshodi, Solo, Amuwo, Dofin, Surulere, and Ojo. Now, going into these elections, we've seen vigorous campaigns from the APC, who has been ruling the state for 20 years. You're going up against the closest rival, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, who has the war chest, a viable structure, and federal might, if you will. Do you think that the demographic will change this time around? And what local governments do you think you will swing those votes from?
Again, let's put it like this. I'm happy you are very much on top of the local governments. The results that have come out now, of those local governments you said, we have won again the Amuwo Dofin, we've won against Surulere. And all the other local governments that we're supposed to win are on hold. They're on hold because no results have been, no candidates have been declared. And that's part of the process. And so we're going to have reruns because there was that deliberate attempt, to suppress on the day of election. There was, we had, like I said, we must have lost at the last election nearly 200,000 votes from the ballot snatching, ballot paper burning, which has affected in those places. So those places still remain our stronghold, and there's nothing changing there, even from the results of the presidential election. The ruling party has always had a war chest, so there's nothing new. But we have always been there to show them, because we're able to get across. And in the course of campaign, like I said, all we hear is, we're going to vote for you. The people are on our side. We've got the numbers on our side. And all they ask is, but are they going to allow this process? Are they going to allow us to vote? Are they going to allow our votes to count? And that's all you hear everywhere. So for me, even with the war chest, it's not selling. And if you look at the polls, it's very clear that all the money, all the posters, all the billboards have really come to very little.
So you're saying that the local government you're still holding on to, and you're not likely to swing more votes from any of the other 15?
No, we're swinging more.
So which ones are you looking at?
Which ones? I asked
because
people,
you had 3 months of campaign.
I tell you what, and I'm being very honest, I'd probably give up 2 local governments in the entire state. And I'm being very honest, very practical about this. If we're talking of a free and fair election, is it Ekpe that is going to vote for them? Is it Etiosa?
The incumbent governor is from Ekpe?
Irrespective. Is it Etiosa? I'm talking of governorship now. Is it going to be Etiosa? No.
Okay. The last time around, in 2015, I remember the royal father in Lagos, the Oba of Lagos, came out specifically. He mentioned that you are his cousin, if I remember that, but it's not your turn. And he supported Ambode. Now Ambode is not in the picture. Has he given you the royal blessing? Because he said you are his cousin. I remember he said something like that.
Well, I don't remember if he said that, but whatever. He's my KBC. He's my KBC. He's the royal father for Lagos State. I don't think we need to go to let's take it that he's
your royal father.
He's our royal father in Lagos. Has he given a blessing? No, it's not about blessing.
Because he openly opposed you last time.
Well, I'm not sure where he stands this time. I'm not sure whether he's made any point this time. And I'll be honest with you, I really haven't followed his position on this one. I know that he did take a position on the presidential, but I'm not sure whether he's taking a. At least I haven't, got his position on the governorship. But I think really, the KBC is a citizen, he's entitled to his opinion. Maybe for some of us, would rather that he doesn't take, open positions. But again, like I said, it's within his rights. But he's got 1 vote.
Let's take a look at your highlights of your manifesto document. We've touched on education briefly.
Yeah.
You've talked on the domestication of the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
Let's look at the loans that you're planning to give to SMEs run by youth, women, and the disabled, and other ways of boosting the economy. Let's take a look at infrastructure, waste management.
Yeah. Well, on the loans, very quickly, the Employment Trust Fund, I would take some credit from. For 2015, it was very much in our manifesto, but we're happy that the state government took it up and is working on it. We'd like to make it a bit more robust, bigger, so that we get more people and that there's value for what they get, because if the amount is too small, then, it's really neither here nor there. In terms of infrastructure, we've talked about power, and I think we've taken a very definite position on power. Lagos probably today gets about, at best, 800 megawatts of power every day. And we're saying that we're going to have an embedded power program that will, in the first 18 months, bring 1,000 megawatts into Lagos in the first 18 months. And by the end of the 4 years, we'll bring an additional 2,000 megawatts. So we're saying that on our own, we should be able to have about 3,000 megawatts of power for Lagos. Because as an embedded power program, it means it will be utilized, generated and utilized in Lagos. And that would be a big boost to business, would be a big boost to the economy of Lagos. So we're committed to that in terms of power. Of course, in terms of waste, I say that the answer to waste is what is called the 3 R's, where you're talking about recover, recycle, and reuse. What we do in Lagos today, Lagos generates so much waste, sorry. It's about, 14,000 metric tons of waste. I think I tried to put that to the equivalent of about 40 trailer loads of waste every day. And what we're trying to do in Lagos is to put these 40 trailers of load into some landfill. It's not workable. We're going to fill the whole of Lagos. And so what you have is a situation where half of it is still lying all over the streets rather than going to the sandfills. And so the way forward is to look at waste, not as a problem, but as an opportunity. And that's what developed countries have done in terms of waste, is to say that you aim for a zero waste policy. So it's not looked at as waste. So you're talking about recycling this waste, you're talking about recovering this waste. But of course, in the immediate, we've got to first clear Lagos of the filth. And again, what has been happening in Lagos is that you've got a lot of people that are being paid to clear waste. But waste is something that is difficult to audit. So if you say you have 100,000 people clearing waste, and you at least the books show, because again, don't forget that Lagos is very opaque in terms of its of governance. So if you say you have 100,000 people on your books, and you have just 20,000, it means that you're not really working as well as you should, even though money is coming out, but results are not coming out. So the immediate is for us to ensure that we clear the waste, and that's doable. As I clear the waste, and then go to the next level of how to recover. That's the recover stage, how to recycle and how to reuse, partnering with the private sector, and that's basically in terms of waste.
If I may just, in the era of revenue generation, Lagos has the biggest IGR in the whole country. But Lagos also has a reputation of having the biggest leakages. Tell us your plan for the IGRO and how to use them effectively.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that Lagos is very opaque. And that's why I said one of the first things we're going to do is the Freedom of Information Act. It not only prevents corruption or leakages, it protects even those in government. So, when you want to change a psyche, people believe that when you're in government, you're supposed to dish out money. And that's how it starts. You're supposed to give money to people. By the time you have a Freedom of Information Act, it's easier for you to say, that there's no way we're going to give you this money without it coming out. And so you begin to do that. And Lagos gives a figure on its IGR. I'm not even sure that it's correct, but there's no way of checking. There's no way of finding out whether it's true, whether it's not true. These are realities. So in terms of the IGR, is to say that we must use it for the purpose that is useful, that is expected, and that's for governance. And the kind of things that we want to do requires that we put our IGR in the right place. Again, Lagos is guilty of something, and that is, in terms of IGR, is that Lagos uses its regulatory agencies more as a vehicle to collect money rather than for the primary purpose for which those agencies, are set up for. So it's like it works to the answer. Lagos says, I want to collect 100 naira. Now, if I'm going to collect 100 naira, how am I going to collect 100 naira? All you agencies, you go get money because we've got to hit this 100 naira, irrespective of whether it's right or it's wrong. And that's why you have the multiple taxes, you have the multiple levies all over the place. And these are some of the things that work, against, people in terms of IGR.
Just
All
to
right,
follow up
okay.
on
Will you continue with the use of private companies, consultants, helping you to get more revenue?
I think it's the way it's done. Lagos has made it clear that there's only one consultant that can do this job. We don't even know what that consultant collects. But we know that sometimes we hear it's 10%, sometimes it's 12%. But we also do know that there was a short period in Lagos, I think last year, where it was given to somebody else, to another company, briefly, very briefly. And that company collected 1 or 2%. Of course, the powers that be reversed it almost immediately. So that gives you an idea of the kind of governance that we have in Lagos. You will need to, you see, governance is about the public and private sector, but it's not about oligarchy. What we have in Lagos is that we're running something close to an oligarchy, where the commanding heights of the economy in Lagos, where the political power of Lagos is concentrated in a few hands.
Just to follow up on your manifesto where Tundu left up, you also have promises to improve education, healthcare, and the engagement of youth,
yes,
and then the blue economy.
Yeah.
But Tundu also raised a vital point earlier when she talked about rancorous relationship between government at the center and in Lagos State, especially when there are opposition parties, the case of Obasanjo and Tinubu. Blue economy, there has been a controversy when it comes to the waterways in Lagos, the state government and the federal government. So how do you plan to work that out?
Well, blue economy is talking about, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the federal government. In terms of rancor and all, don't forget that we also had a situation in our country where you had the Jakonde of the UPN in Lagos. And you had an NPN administration at the center, and they worked well. And that's why I said it depends on what you're really fighting over. But the kind of blue economy we're talking about, we're looking at our waters and saying, let's take Ekpe. You have fishermen. They fish every day. They have to sell their fish at whatever based on the demand. So it goes up today, it comes down tomorrow. We're saying we can help them. We need to look at storage, for example. If you do get people, private sector, to, in terms of refrigeration, it means that the fisherman has a stable price for his fish. He knows that as much fish as he can, catch, will have a steady source of income. So you look at storage, you look at processing, you look at packaging. That's all part of the water economy we're talking about. So it's less an issue of the federal government. We look at boats, motor engines, building of boats. That's all part of the water economy that we're talking about. We look at transportation. We're talking of intermodal transportation. And so we're looking at the waterways and saying we must use the water more than.
But that's where the problem has always been, water transportation. And the federal government says, it has right of way for those waters, and the Lagos State government says we cannot assure the safety of people if we cannot regulate the waterways.
But they do regulate the waterways.
To some extent.
Yeah.
They don't have the full power to do so.
You see, what you have is like people that are fighting over land, and where the issue comes, again, is about self-interest. I think somebody played a joke some time ago and said, it's in Lagos that you are allotted land by the shore, and maybe 5 years after, you find that there's no more shore because they've sandfilled again. So you've lost your water, your waterfront thing. So what you find when you look deeper is that the real fight is not so much because of the people, it's because of self-interest, and that's about land. It's about sand filling. It's about, we can get more land. It's not about really whether you want to provide water transportation. That's not where the problem is. And that's the reality. And that's why I said a lot of things, once it's about for the people, it's difficult to puncture. It's difficult to stop, because you're saying that we want to have a taxi, we want to dredge in a way that bigger boats, safer boats can be used. Nobody's going to stop you on that. It's when, like I said, it becomes we want more land. Then you have issues. But we're talking about the majority of our people. We're talking of water economy in terms of, like I said, fish processing, fish storage, fish packaging. Those are the kind of things. Talking of motorboat engines and all. And that's really what we're really looking at. And of course, water transportation.
All right, let me drag you back to what to expect in the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Because the PDP chieftain was here yesterday talking about Chief Olabode Judge.
Okay.
And he was hinting on the fact that for Lagos State to probably unshackle themselves from the Emperor of Babylon, as they like to call him, all right.
In his words.
In his own words.
Yeah.
Yes, he would, there might need to be a consortium, there might need to be a coalition. And there have been talks that probably the PDP and several other political parties are seeking to come together to probably fight the behemoth. And we want to find out, is that a reality? Are we expecting that in the coming days? Or is that even in the works? Are you thinking about it? Are there talks? Or do you think it's already too late to start talking about
No, it's not about
coalition?
it's not about being too late. I mean, we've had a lot of parties that are working with us. Maybe we have not made it a press conference thing. But let me assure you that there are many parties that are working with us. There are many gubernatorial candidates that have said, look, Jimmy, we'll step down for the PDP candidate.
Parties like...
Well, I'd rather they mention their names, but I can assure you that there are many of them that are working with us.
Is the ADP one of them?
I can, for example, give an Accord party,
Okay.
because that was public. But I don't think it would be right for me to mention other parties.
Is that how do you seek to? The reason why I ask this question is how do you seek to unseat a power or an infrastructure that has been standing for the last 20 years? You yourself, you've tried severally, twice, and it hasn't worked out. The PDP has been trying for time and time again, and things haven't panned out. What do you want to do differently that will this time around?
What is different this time around is that there are a lot more people that feel it's time up for these people in the ruling party. That it's time for a change in Lagos. And I think that message, our message, has resonated very strongly. We had a movement that was set up, sometime last week or something? That's the Otoge Lagos,
yes.
Which is basically along a message, because they're talking of Otoge Lagos, which is basically free Lagos.
Enough is enough.
Again, enough is enough. So I'm saying that it means our message has resonated in a way that more people are saying it's time up. And so even the parties you're talking about are saying, look, let's be realistic. If we feel that the PDP candidate is the best person to face this monster, so to say, then why not? Let's align behind him. That's the kind of thing that's playing out. So we have a lot more people today that are going. And that's why I said everybody's fear is that we have an election that will allow the people to have their say, that will allow them to even go out and vote. That's the greatest fear. That's what we're all working towards, to ensure that as many people as possible will come out and vote, will feel safe enough to come out and vote. Safe enough for that day, but more importantly, safe enough after that day. There's nothing like when government or when people use government to tell you that we know who you're going to vote for. I mean, we know the results in your area, and we assure you that if it is not us that win or wins, then we're coming after you.
I want to ask you two things now. Your party yesterday picketed the INEC office with a view to, it is imagined, to sort of drum up enough attention to the issue of the irregularities and the infractions that allegedly took place on February 23rd to prevent the reoccurrence of such things, which things like what you just described, scenarios like what you just described. Do you think that measure, trying to really highlight the problem, do you think it will curb any inclinations on the part of any bad actors? That's the first question for you. The second one is that you lost your polling unit to APC. Sanwo-Olu lost his polling unit to PDP.
Yeah.
Is this your third race? Is this the tightest so far?
No, it's not about being tight. I think we've got to understand the dynamics of the elections. In the first place, I don't subscribe to vote buying. Let me put it like that. So that's one. And the elections of the 23rd of February was such that it had to do with the president you have a situation in my locality, for example, where you have quite a number of people that come from, that are aligned to the president. Let me put it like that, especially non-Indians in my locality. And it was very clear that they were going to vote one way. But it had nothing to do with me. And that's why I said that come Saturday, you'll see the results. And even in 2015 elections, a similar thing played out in the sense that you had the people who voted one way for the president. But then at my elections, I won my polling unit because they had said, well, they finished their politics of the national at that level. They will now vote for me at my election. So, and that's probably what's going to play out this time also. They've voted the way they want in terms of the president. And I know that I'm going to win my polling unit for that.
Well, okay, what about the deterrent value, if any, of PDP picketing the INEC office?
Oh, well, I mean, it's within their rights. Once it's not violent, I think the whole essence is to put pressure in different ways on the agency that things should be done right. There's a lot of things that are not done well. For example, personally, I have an issue with this problem of card reader. On the day of the poll, it didn't work for me. It didn't work for two before me. It didn't work for my wife. It didn't work for two after me. And then what happens when the card reader doesn't work? They then say, well, you do manual, you know. Fine. Everybody knows this, Jimi Agbaje. But that process, you know, opens up for all kinds of manipulations because it does not allow the polling agent to check on who's the rightful owner of the PVC. So it means that if I have colluded with the INEC official, it means that I can bring anybody's PVC. I can bring anybody's PVC, you know, and use. And that's something that shouldn't be. So I'm not comfortable with that process.
You talked about vote buying. There was an incident recently at the Secretariat, Lagos State Secretariat, Lausa, and you described that incident as a vote buying and influencing of civil servants, where things were being distributed. The APC candidate has reacted in a statement. He describes you as politically naive and a learner. He says he was just interacting with the civil servants.
Well, it's interesting coming from him. If he calls me a learner, I'll reserve my comments. Maybe just, like I said, I believe that this election is not so much about him. It's about something bigger than him. And in any case, he's accepted that he's a puppet. So he's on record to say that, yes, he's a puppet and he's proud to be a puppet. So I really, and if you observe my campaigns, he has not really been the issue. The issue has been those that have held Lagos for so long. He can't call me a learner, definitely, at least not as far as politics is concerned. So I'll just leave it at that.
Have you been stopped from interacting with the civil servants in Lagos State? Because you said he had been given an undue advantage for having a meeting with them and then the distribution that happened.
No, I believe what the campaign was saying was that it was a show of shame. You know, when you bring the civil service to the level that it was brought, where you, in the first place, you had a situation where a governorship candidate, you know, invited all the civil servants during working hours, and work was stopped, government work was stopped. That in itself is not right. It's not different from when the toll gate issue came up, where they opened the toll gates, and it was claimed that the candidate was paying for vehicles that passed the toll gate, the Lekki toll gate. You know, it's an abuse, and that's basically what we're saying. And it's a show of shame when you see civil servants, you know, when you're throwing things at them, where you're bringing them to a level where they're fighting over rice. And basically that's what we're saying. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, there's something about the Lagos voting population. You hinted at it, but I think it's more worrisome to the extent that we have 6 million registered voters, 5.2 million collected PVCs, yet just a little over 1 million voted. And it's not new to this, it's about the same figure last time. So what's happening in Lagos? Is it that you politicians are not doing enough of mobilization?
Well, last time was better. I think last time was just over 1.5. So it was 50% even higher than what you had this time round. So for me, it's not good for Lagos. Lagos is, we're a more enlightened society in Lagos. And we must get our people to be part of it. So it means we're doing something wrong. It's either I think there's the issue, like I said, government in the past has used these regulatory agencies just for other purposes, but from the primary purpose. So people now begin to look at collecting PVCs as just one of those things. Government says you must register with the registration authority. Okay, so they don't chase me around. Let me do that. Okay, they say you must go and get your PVCs. Okay, let me go and get my PVCs. Yeah, my PVC. I've held on to it, but I don't need to do anything. Government people over 20 years are asking themselves, okay, this voting, what has it brought for us? Is education better today? We have an education in Lagos where in the last 20 years, only 20% of our children have passed WAEC with 5 credits at English in Lagos. So you're asking yourself, what does it really do for me? Our health in Lagos is below national average. Our life expectancy is 49 years. It's below the national average of 55, 56. So people begin to ask themselves, really, does it matter? And that's the challenge that we have, that we voted and voted, and life hasn't changed. Quality of life has not improved. If anything, it's getting worse. That's really what's playing out. And so it's for us, to do a lot of work in this area to kind of get people to vote. And so the more you do that, then you then have situations where you are now intimidating people to come out. So it's like one force is trying to bring people out, and there's another force trying to say, no, you mustn't come out. So that's part of the reason.
We can almost hear the strain of the campaign in your voice.
Oh.
But would this be the year for Jimi Agbaje, third time lucky?
I'm not sure it's the third time lucky. I like to say that in 2015, we ran an election. Yes, I wasn't declared winner. But that, when growing up in school, I was telling some people the other day, you were taught that if you worked hard, if you studied hard, you did your homework well, you'd come out tops in class. But our politics is not like that. It's not about how well you've worked, how hard you've worked. You can work very hard and get the votes and still not be declared winner. So I think the real challenge for me is not so much the votes, it's how to make sure that those votes count. So are we going to win? We're going to win this one. I'm sure about that. And all we're going to say is just to ask Lagosians to come out and vote and leave the rest to us.
Well, this whole talk has highlighted several challenges, haven't they? Like voter apathy, voter suppression, intimidation, and then the tensions, the ethnic tensions, so many challenges. We wish you all the best with solutions to all those challenges.
Thank you. So I hope to come back to you after the elections as the governor-elect.
His Excellency.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.